Hey, welcome everyone. This is AI in Education, Custom Boss GPTs, our monthly gathering, and we are celebrating today. So happy to see you all to celebrate our 1 year anniversary. We started gathering in April of 2024, which in AI years is more than 10 years at least, because everything has been happening. But from the beginning, we've been interested in talking about custom boss GPTs, developments, sharing strategies. And I'm feeling especially grateful. I'm always grateful, but especially today for all our past presenters that brought us to where we are and all our participants. And we have Renee Parker here, who just presented for us in March and so many familiar faces. But if you are new and are kind of like, oh wait, what is this? I know I'm interested, but what is this? Quick links for you, and I'm sending you this by chat again. This is where you can find all the links for everything. And this is where you can find the recording for today. I will put it here in that linked YouTube playlist and an anonymized version of the chat. And please, yes, jump on the icebreaker and share where you are logging in from today. But if you are new, we are a subgroup of the wonderful and very global and very big AI in Education group. We are more than 2,000 members now, founded in 2023. And we are here for sharing resources and information related to the impact of AI on teaching and learning. And our first presenter is Daniel Ernesto Ronderos López. I was fortunate to meet Daniel at a symposium we both presented at, thanks to Yulia Yoncheva, who told us about that opportunity, and we were all working together in the same panel. By the way, I really recommend the symposium. I think it's every year, and I added the link to the notes as well. So when I heard what Daniel was doing, it was very original and very inspiring. So I really wanted to bring him to our group, and I'm so happy he can be with us today. Daniel is assistant professor at the Universidad de los Andes in Colombia and a founding partner of AI Architectural Engineering. He's focused his work on developing methodologies that allow architecture and design students to be more competitive in the job market, combining his professional and academic experience.
Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to start sharing my screen. This is what I'm going to present. It's called the Infinite Student. It's a methodology anchored in the learning by teaching method where students become educators. But this came about when I was doing research and understanding how LLMs work. And this pyramid is derived from Maslow's hierarchy of needs or design needs, where at the bottom, to have an AI, you need to record, collect, gather data, then you have to move it, store it, transform it, and analyze it and label it, and then you're able to take that data and train, actually train and synthesize and optimize and refine models that we ultimately end up using. And we're used to seeing the tip of this pyramid, which I suggest we look at it as an iceberg. And looking at this iceberg, we're on a boat, students and educators who are in the same boat. And we're trying to figure out how to, head towards this iceberg because we're headed towards it. And the idea is not to crash into it, but to maneuver and to see what this iceberg can bring to the academic experience. But it is very foggy because we have a lot of tools, right? We have a lot of LLMs, we have a lot of generators, we have a lot of things that students and educators use but we're using just the practical or the deliverable phase of these tools. And we're missing out on what it's beneath it. So let's think that this iceberg is floating in a human-centered ocean. And instead of just focusing on the tools and what they do, let's focus on the history behind them or the things that make them happen. So if we send probes made out of students and educators and explore this iceberg and see what's happening beneath the surface, we would find that the recording process, the gathering of data, the moving, the storage, the analyzing, the labeling, and finally the delivery stage or the train, optimize, synthesize stage is very similar or could be defined as these four stages in design thinking. So rather of thinking of all this complex technical stuff for students and for educators, let's think about that we could leverage all the tools that are fogging the landscape or the seascape in this case, and bring them down the surface into all the stages of design thinking and use these tools to emphasize, to define, to ideate, and to deliver. Therefore, there's a frontier, or the surface becomes a dividing line between what humans can do to leverage AI models and leverage AI capabilities with human intelligence. And the bottom part of this iceberg, which are the emphasize, the define, and the ideate stages of design thinking, well, they're more related to human intelligence than artificial intelligence, rather than the upper part or the top of this iceberg. It's a collaborative setting that you can bear witness because it's out in the open, it's on the surface, that requires human intelligence and artificial intelligence collaboration. Under this definition, I started researching the concept of supermind, which is, well, when you hear about supermind, you would think that is something that is out of science fiction or something like that, but it's rather old. It exists since humans collaborate and gather collective intelligence. So anchoring the concept of or the idea of making AI part of the supermind, we can leverage collective intelligence and make AI part of that collective intelligence. And while there are types of superminds, there are hierarchies that are, there are organizational systems like in a company or in an institution where there's a head of the institution that takes decisions for everyone else's behalf and benefit. A democracy, it's also another type of supermind where everyone participates in decision making via representative democracy or liquid democracy or other types of democracies. We have markets that are systems or superminds that make decisions founded or based on the agreements between buyers and sellers, or finite or smaller groups inside the market that gradually morph all of the circumstances in the system or the supermind. The community, where you make decisions and you take considerations based on reputation and norms, agreements that as a community you come to agree on, and ecosystems, which is the law of the nature, the survival of the fittest. Under this notion, we can take the initial hierarchy of needs pyramid and turn it into then it evolves into this human-centered design thinking iceberg that considers empathizing, defining, ideating, and delivering, and finally taking that and putting it into a ecosystem or a system, a supermind that that integrates AI as part of the collaborative intelligence or the collective intelligence, where the elements that bring up the or make the AI possible are founded on different types of superminds and different procedures that the superminds have to collectively build. So how does this work? In the course of that's called Interior Landscapes, we created an intelligent conversator for design and architecture students called SIEDA. And how did this work? We had this group of students. We divided them into groups. And each group had a design challenge to turn Villa Paulina, which is a historical landmark building inside our campus, and that is traditionally used for a quite an out-of-date restaurant for mostly faculty members, which is not popular between among students. It's becoming every year as every year passes, it becomes less popular among professors as well, and educators and administrators. So it's like a space which is beautiful as a building because it's historical, it is colonial, it has a lot of these architectural and design elements that make the conservation of this building worth it, but its use, well, it's being subutilized. So the challenge is to turn this space into a residential building, a residential building, a commercial building, or a hospitality building. To do this, each group is assigned, or each student is assigned a president as a architect, an artist, or a designer, and a film or a TV show or some kind of audiovisual document that has a lot of design content that can be analyzed in terms of style and compositive elements. With this, they watch the movies, they study the presidents, and they build documents, individual documents. Each student builds their individual documents, where what is most interesting is that they take their insights, what they learned from the movies and from the presidents and from these architects and artists and designers, and they create a document that synthesizes what they learned, what they think about these presidents, what they think it's valuable, and what they bring to the table. Then, as they're working in groups, each student comes together to collectively create a single document that gathers information from all the individual documents and generates valuable insights for a posterior or a future chatbot training. So what happens is that all of the groups start building the database or the data set to train a collective intelligence, which is called SIEDA, by gathering individual documents and turning them and converting these documents into group documents that finally go into SIEDA's training. They also leverage human-centered design tools as empathy maps, or journey maps, or value proposition canvases, or day in a life schemes, and they gather the needs of the community. So they don't only have a secondhand information from precedents and documents, but they also have a, a first-hand information or first-hand research from primary sources that are the community's needs, perceptions, pains, and desires, which derive into insights that enrich the training data for the training of the chatbot. So they take their research, their desk research, their bibliographical or multimedia research, and combine it with their experience research that they gather from the community, and they turn it into the training or data set of CIEDA that turns into the chatbot. So this becomes the chatbot that is gonna become an assistant for the students to develop their projects to address the design challenge of turning Villa Paulina, which is the restaurant that I told you about, into this new space. So what they do is that we use a platform called Fastbots, which is a marketing tool, a commercial chatbot tool. The one like this is a platform where you build chatbots that are meant for customer support or customer service, which is really easy to train. So we train it on ChatGPT 4.0 mini because, well, it's maybe not the best of the models, but it's sufficient enough and is the less expensive one. So that's why we use it. The community then that is the course had to agree on and has to collectively the students have to collectively build and redact a prompt that tells the chatbot how to behave and how to answer. They have to function as a community to leverage the capabilities of the supermind of the collective intelligence of the course, of the whole course, and come to the agreement of how the chatbot is supposed to behave and what the answers should be like, and in what tone should the chatbot answer and deliver the responses. So the platform uses RAG method or technology to embed all the documents that they created into the chatbot's knowledge base, and then they start testing it. So they start testing, and they deploy the chatbot. So other users, different from the students in the course, can start to interact with CIEDA. So they can get feedback on how CIEDA is behaving through the chat history. As Fastbots is a platform meant for marketing, it has a chat history log where you as a creator, or the students in this case, can go into the chat history and see what the responses of CIEDA were with different users. This way, they can spot errors and correct them. So they have to start teaching the bot when it makes a mistake. The idea is for the bot to make mistakes. The idea is for the bot to answer in ways that need refining. So the students have to really know about their precedents, really know about the customers or the clients or the users' needs, know about the styles and aesthetics proposed by the films, and what they as a group have built is a cumulus of knowledge. So as being experts, they have to teach the chatbot when the chatbot makes a mistake. So they go into the tuning part of the platform and start inputting via text corrections and overriding the mistakes that the chatbot makes. Therefore, learning by teaching. So these are the results where students start interacting with the chatbot, with Sierra. All the groups start interacting with Sierra, and they start creating prompts to generate images that recreate what they want in the design. They also use 3D modeling tools to use as a base to take the geometry and create 3D renderings of the spaces that they are designing. So these are some examples of how, for example, this is group 1. They used Photoshop to create the renderings, but they used SketchUp, that's a 3D modeling tool, to create the space. So using the geometry of the 3D model, and Photoshop, they created prompts using Sierra, the infinite student, the chatbot, and these are the results. These are other results where you can see right here in the right-hand side, the 3D model and what they were doing and how they wanted these spaces to be rendered. These are other ones that some of the students use drawings to feed the prompt and different tools such as Chrome AI. They use Rhino as a 3D modeling software. They also used hand sketching, as I told you before. So these are how the students interacted with 3D modeling and AI, and well, mostly AI image generators. So this was experiment 1. This is the experiment 2, where there's a course that I teach that it's called Tools and Processes with Generative AI, and the design challenge was to create a graphic novel. For this, we use Sapia, which is a tool that if we use WhatsApp, it uses the chat interface called WhatsApp, the texting instant texting interface that WhatsApp. You added it as a contact in your cell phone, and using voice notes, Sapia can transcribe what the voice notes are. So what the students did is that they started interacting. They had to create a graphic novel about some theme. So they had to define what the theme was, and to do this, they started interviewing different users, or their friends, their family, other people that gave them input on what this graphic novel should be about. So using Sapia, they transcribed using the voice notes, and in this case, they used DeepSeek. At the time, it was the only, deep thinking or reasoning LLM that was free to use at the time. So they used all the transcripts and input them into DeepSeek using the reasoning capabilities to generate an outline of what the graphic novel should be. So under the concept of Supermind, they brought in the idea of Supermind and integrated people that were outside the course, and using DeepSeek as an integrator, they used the reasoning capabilities of the LLM to create an outline of what the graphic novel should be. With this input, they cleaned the data using DeepSeek and generated the knowledge base, because they were able to categorize every idea that the users gave the students. They were able to label, let's say label, in quotes, the data that they gathered from the context and from other users, and they fed it the same way as I showed you before, into Fastbots to create a chatbot specifically for this purpose. This wasn't a chatbot for the whole class, but each student developed a small chatbot that was an expert on the information that they gathered from other users and became an expert for them. So this was a chatbot that was built exclusively for to assist that person developing the graphic novel. And we also use something that I created, which is a tool that is called the empathic prompting generator, which is it's a little HTML code embedded in my website that uses the prompt syntaxes to generate prompts to create images. In the prompt, well, it needs a task, a clear task, a style, a context, a tone, and an example to create a robust, a somewhat robust prompt for the students to feed a image generator so it can, they have more control on the image generating part. It's a simple interface that you can see here. And you
Daniel,
can
about
just
4 minutes left.
okay, and then they created this. This was the ultimate result. The prompting, the empathic prompting was sufficient enough for them to have control over the style and be consistent. And finally, I wanted to know if the infinite student worked, and how could I perceive, or how did my students perceive the infinite student or the chatbot? And so I created. I haven't created it. I've been working on this. That is the artificial intelligence pertinence index, because all of this, we can do renderings. It takes us more time. We can write things. It takes us more time. And AI takes care of mechanical aspects in all of these processes that I showed you, not the deep creative things. But I wanted to build an index to see if the use of AI was pertinent for my students. And this index is it's the interaction between three individual indexes. The first one is the task load index, which measures the load of any task when there is human-computer interaction created at NASA. And then I adapted this for my students. There's also the creative support index, which is an index created by some researchers that in my webpage there you have the reference there, and the creative support index, and the capacity augmentation index. That this is something that I created, that I proposed to my students to assess to what extent does human input and AI inputs collaborate to develop certain tasks or certain processes. So by combining these three indexes, you get the artificial intelligence pertinence index. That for this course and for the course that created the graphic novel had this graph where you could see that for the AI became pertinent for students when the creativity index was the highest, and where the task load index was the lowest. This for me is a preliminary reading, because if a student is expecting for the AI to relieve them of tasks and make them work less, let's say, less demanding load in how heavy or how much things they have to do with the AI, and they're expecting for the AI to be automatic or to just create things or to delegate most of the creative part of the processes. Well, they are disappointed. As you can see, when the task is lower, where the weighted index of the weighted load of the task is higher, so it's the red bars, they don't see it as something that is functional. But when they measure and they see that it increases their support their creativity, the pertinence becomes higher. So as a preliminary conclusion to all this, I think that leveraging chatbots in creative environments or creative educational environments is something meaningful for students and helpful when they when the chatbots challenge them to be more creative and challenge them to create more interesting data sets. So thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Wonderful, so much to think about, and we have many questions for you in the chat. We'll do them all combined, but I know we could talk about this all day, and we want to hear more from you all day. And what you said in the conclusion, that's what all of us at whatever level we are of interacting with AI and incorporating it into our teaching, that is our hope too, right? That we are incorporating it in ways that promote critical thinking, whatever subject we teach. This is wonderful. And I will now turn us to our second presenter. This is Carsten Bergenholtz. I know Carsten through our very own AI in Education group and the AI in Education subgroup. He is joining us he's associate professor in the Department of Management at Aarhus University. His research areas cover collective problem solving, and a core topic of his research and teaching is investigating how to leverage Gen AI in higher education, particularly in customized chatbots aligned with particular learning objectives. And he will talk to us about a chatbot for philosophy of science students. Thank you so much, Carsten. Over to you.
And thank you. I assume you can see the slides here. Yeah, so thank you for the invitation. Thanks for the opportunity to present what I've done here with Phil, as I've called the little robot we use in class. And as I highlight here in the title, this is really about what to do when you have a large class. I have 550 students in my philosophy of science. You could also call it a scientific methods class. And what could I then do to help them? Because I knew they were going to use generative AI. So what could I then do to help them with that? Casandra already very nicely introduced me. I want to say I sort of still do and used to do research on problem solving, collective problem solving, but now I have a few working papers that I'm working on generative AI students and what to do. But I certainly also have a practical focus, both for my own course, but also more generally at my faculty. So, as I said, I want to talk about why to offer this in large classes. What is the key thing? And I guess I could already sort of give them my main point here in the beginning that I don't worry that much about hallucinations. On a bachelor level in philosophy of science, ChatGPT 4.5 or Google AI, Gemini, whatever they're called, they do very well. I worry about alignment with the course curriculum. We have students that take exams and they want to do well in those exams, and those exams have a curriculum and course objective. And it's about giving them a chatbot that actually takes the part in that. I don't want to talk, as Casandra did, I want to talk about what I specifically did in last year's class and this year's class and try to look into the future. Here you can see at the bottom what it sort of looks like. It's a very typical chatbot interface in students. So the educational context, just to be explicit about that, as I said, 6th semester bachelor student, business administration students, 550 of them, no tutorials, no instructors. and an on-site exam where they cannot access neither chatbots or internet, or they can access the notes. But just sort of to give what meaningful use could they get out of the chatbot in this course? It is for trying to learn and understand the course. It's not to be able to use it in the exam. And again, here I've tried to highlight sort of the challenges you could imagine there are with a regular chatbot. But the key things I've highlighted here in bold, it's less about hallucinations. Sure, they make mistakes still. I don't like what they write about quasi experiments, for instance. But it's really about learning objectives. A regular chatbot does not know the particular course context. And also related to that, something that I call epistemic transparency or intransparency is that chatbots struggle to provide proper sources. They're often made up or unspecific. I'll get more back to that in the end. I want to give students not just the answer, I want them to be able to look where in the curriculum that answer actually stems from. So those are really the two core objectives I have. There's also something about heterogeneity. It's nice to have a standardized chatbot that gives the same answers to different students. Something about inequality. There is something about paying to get access to better chatbots, even though the difference is not major. And something about GDPR. I know that's a EU-Europe thing, less of an American thing. And I heard rumors that we might do something about GDPR in Europe, and I got very happy. So let's see what happens there. But I want a chatbot that answers truthfully, but especially based on my curriculum and provides references. And for now, still, that is GDPR compliant. So basically, also what I want to then highlight and say here is that the chatbot that we developed, I think, solves all these problems that we have that I highlight here in the 6 bullet points to the right. The free or freely available or the commercial platforms such as GPT or Google Notebook, or those that you pay for, like all-day TA or custom GPT, they can solve some of these challenges, and I guess in the future they might be able to solve all of them. I'll address that. It's a RAG kind of chatbot, and I know from sort of the experience level that people have here that some will probably already know what this is, but just sort of to be explicit about that. What does it mean when I say it's a RAG? It means retrieve, augment, generate. You don't really have to memorize that. The main point is that when you ask a chatbot, it basically asks based on the full global knowledge that it has, and then you can create a nice prompt in order to specify exactly what knowledge you're going for. In a RAG setup, a customized chatbot that we have is, let's say you ask, what is a confounding variable? That is then processed through a large language model into some keywords, and then using those keywords, our customized chatbot will then search through the document that it has been told to use. It finds relevant stuff in there. That's the box I'm highlighting here. And then again, the large language model is then processing those insights into an answer to the student. This is what a confounding variable is. So it's not just a large language model. It's not just sort of some kind of retrieval system. It's both. But the key thing is, if it's being asked for something, who is Daniel? He just gave a nice talk. I want to hear more about who that is. I'm sure that ChatGPT-4 is willing to say some stuff, but my RAG here will say nothing. It will say, I don't know, because it's not in the documents that have been uploaded. So there is a clear sort of epistemic limit there. There is stuff it won't say anything about. That's the main benefit of it. I've mainly only used this, included this slides to highlight that if you don't know what this means that I'm showing here, then you wouldn't be able to build this kind of Azure app that we have. Azure chatbot. If you do want to know what it is, then maybe you could build whatever we have. But if all of these terms here are not intuitive to you, then don't try to build this yourself. So that's basically the point of this one here. Here I want to show what does the interface that I then see as someone who's offering a customized chatbot to a user, what that then looks like. And this is then actually after it's been set up. So we have a system where we have had some clever computer science students develop on this Microsoft Azure platform. So they've now developed sort of a prototype that we can use, and it's very easy for me now to upload documents, to change the documents, to add more. I can change the system prompt here to the left. I can see all the conversations. I can sort of download those conversations. I can use the large language model to get a summary of what are people talking about. But it's a very nice and easy accessible system that is extremely easy to use. after it's been set up. So again, I just want to highlight, you can't just go to Microsoft Azure, click 2 buttons, and it's there. There's some programming that has to take place first. But if you have people that are able to do that first step, then setting it up and launching another one is actually quite straightforward. This was not the case when we did it the first time in 2024, and I had a colleague who was technically proficient. She did all that. That was very new back then, last year. But engaging with it and seeing what people are writing is very easy. We've anonymized it, so I can't see who writes what. But in principle, you could see who writes what. It's a very typical chatbot interface. You ask a question, then you get an answer. But the key thing I want to say here is that when you get an answer, you can see there is a note here that says 1 or 2, and as user, you can click on that, and then you get a link to the source that was used to generate the answer. You don't just have to trust the answer that the chatbot gives. You can actually say, I want to see where in the curriculum, for one, this answer was generated from, and I want to see what's actually written in the curriculum, maybe because I want to probably understand it, or I'm skeptical. So there's epistemic transparency. You don't just have to say, okay, I trust you, chatbot. You can actually sort of demand, I want to see the source. And this, it doesn't make mistakes. It's just the way that it's built. It's not based on guessing like a large language model. So I've never seen it make a mistake in sort of when you try to go to the original reference. It still makes mistakes. I'll get back to that. But this sort of the sourcing works. Another issue is that it's copyright. You can't. Well, I guess you could, in principle, upload whatever you want. No one might notice, but of course, we should adhere to copyright norms and rules. So I then have used text I've written myself. It's actually more than 50 pages, probably more than like 80, 100 pages now. I have video lectures from COVID times that I can generate subtitles from. I have slides I can upload. I have good exams that students have given in prior years. I've just collected a bunch of things that I've explicit permission to use. If you start a course for the first time and only have a commercial textbook, well, there's really no way that you can use this kind of thing. You need to, I've taught this course for quite some years, so you need to have access to material that allows you to add enough information to the chatbot to fill so that it can generate answers. But I'm also using stuff from Popper or Kuhn or other sort of folks that where I don't have the copyright, so I can't upload all the curriculum. So there's a lot of text here, but it's not all the curriculum, which has some implication for what it does well. Did students like it? Well, if we had known in advance, I think we finished building it like a week into the course, basically. If we did known in advance, it would be used 20,000 times. I don't think we would have built it because we would have been too scared. So students really liked it. Here I have some, there are sample bias, etc. So don't sort of take these with a pinch of salt, but I really noticed that on a scale from 1 to 5, most were on a 4, which means they didn't like, it wasn't perfect. It didn't give them, there was stuff it didn't answer, there was stuff it didn't know, and maybe the answers were too short. But like everyone that used it found it useful. And of course, again, the fact that they used it 20,000 times, of course, also illustrates that they thought it was very useful. So just to highlight, they were very happy about it, the students. So what about the quality? I randomly selected 230 responses in order to assess the quality of them, and I just made up my own coding scheme here. So again, I know this is my product, so to speak, and I'm the one evaluating it. So don't sort of, this is not sort of the full truth, and one could have sort of a more rigorous approach to it, but this was mainly just for me to know. And I had an interest in finding out whether it was good or not. So 14% of the time, it did not give an answer, as you can see. Sometimes, which is not really answering the question. It wasn't wrong. It was just sort of, you know what large language models can do. As you can recall, there was a large language model in the process. So that's why it can sometimes go off. And there were mistakes in there, mistakes that were misleading to students. Often because I might have had a slide that said the name of one author, and then I had quotes in the slides from another author, and then the large language model couldn't figure out what was what. So many of those mistakes are just my material that is bad. But some of them is because, yeah, large language models are not really trustworthy. But most of the answers were really good. And I could then also track along the way what went wrong and what didn't go well. And then I can explain to students what's happening here. My 2025 course just finished last week, so I haven't had like time to like fully study everything. A few comments here. I've had a student assistant assess 123, typically ask questions. And as you can see, whenever this is the bottom line, this is for me, I guess, the key line. All research design questions, all material on research design is something I produce, so I can upload it. And on a scale from 1 to 3, it's very, very close to the top. So it's basically flawless. There were no major mistakes in there. Whenever it asks questions about stuff that is only indirectly covered, or when they ask sort of some general questions that it actually doesn't do that well on, as you can see, it's not really perfect. But I've tried to be clear to them that it's sort of the research design angle, this is what it actually does well. So again, quality-wise, this is good, and I'll talk something about how this compares to GPTs in just a second. Interestingly, I had slightly fewer students this year, but still it was only used 10,000 times this year. I know 10,000 is a lot. Of course, I'm not really sure why. I think a lot more students are building their own customized chatbot in GPTs and OpenAI or Google Notebook LM. This year's chatbot gives longer answers. And I guess I don't really know. But there is a substantial difference in the number of times. And I think the main reason is students are building their own customized chatbots. That would be my best guess. But still, as I say, quality-wise, it's really good. Cost, just to give you that sort of a sense of that, the actual cost for really running the course was 400 euros last year. This year it's slightly less. So it's not free, but given it's 550 students, of course, business models of universities around the world is different, but the income that we generate from 550 students is let's say you can put like, what is it, 3-4 zeros on top of that. This is like a very, very minor cost, and my head of department doesn't really care about that. So that was sort of the presentation of sort of the essence of the chatbot that I developed with colleagues. It's Microsoft Azure based. You need programming experience. It's very, very good. But what are the alternatives? You can get to some commercial platforms that are not free. You have to pay for them. Custom GPT, Old ATA. There are others. I'm just mentioning 2 here. You can go to, and there's a long list that Casandra also just pointed to in the Google Doc before. There's a long list of various free-to-use platforms. Free to use for the user. Sometimes you might have to have a subscription to use them properly as the one who actually offers stuff. GPT, Google Notebook, it's Google Gemini bots, etc. There are a bunch of offers. And I'm not sure how widespread that awareness is. The tech publishers and commercial textbooks, they're working intensely on producing this. So you can already have access to online versions with extra stuff on top of it. And it's simply a matter of time before most of these textbooks for, I don't know, philosophy of science or relational behavior, whatever you're teaching, will have a RAG associated to it. It's an obvious business model for these publishers, and an obvious way of trying to keep people keep them to make even more money. I guess we all know that these publishers like Wiley and Elsevier, I think they make enough money, but I'm sure they want to make more. So a few comments on what I think about that. Just sort of for those that might not really know, you can go to the GPT store on ChatGPT on the OpenAI website, and you can very easily, it takes 30 seconds, create your own custom version of a GPT where you upload documents and then ask the chatbot to search in those documents. The GPT is not a RAG, I should highlight. It's just searching, and it's just sort of, crudely speaking, based on the guessing technology. So a few words about that. So let's say you have this GPT. First of all, it doesn't really do, as you can see, the name here up in the top left. Can't even recall if it's publicly available. It will give an answer, but it doesn't show the actual source of the document. It's not really able to do that as far as I understand it. And it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily constrained by the source. It might go beyond it. But I've just highlighted my reference to Phil. I hope you sort of remember that you could actually click on a link and then click on a button, and then you could actually see where the information was coming from. You cannot do that in the GPT example. And if you ask it when I've uploaded my documents from the course, the same one as to Phil, and I ask it what an incremental variable is, not mentioned at all in my course at any point, it will happily give an answer, even though that is not in the curriculum. So at least the way that I've tried it in GPT with OpenAI, doesn't have the epistemic transparency. It doesn't show where its information is coming from. And it goes beyond the uploaded documents. I've tried 10 sort of typical questions from my philosophy of science course, and in 6 of them either went beyond the question or it went beyond the curriculum in answering it. It was rarely wrong. It was wrong 1 out of those 10 times. But for a student who's studying to do well in an exam, it can be frustrating because the student won't know what's a curriculum, what is not a curriculum. So that's for me really a key challenge for using this kind of system. I have to say though, I used Google Notebook LM the first time in September. I used it to produce the podcast that you might have heard of. You can get AI generated podcasts. I used it to produce 6, and 2 of them were rubbish. 2 were I could fix them, and 2 were good. So I gave up on that. And then I tried again a couple of weeks ago with 5 or 6, just based on my own documents, generated in total 100 minutes of podcast. I couldn't identify an error. Or actually, I could identify one, and then I realized that was my own error in my own text. So I can't really blame the Google Notebook LM for that. So I have to say I'm very, very impressed. And the Google Notebook LM is also, I mean, I guess we don't really know what it's based on the technology, but it is based on a RAG technology. So it is actually searching, it's chunking and indexing the documents that you upload. So if you ask a question, does proper think we establish objective truth? It goes to the document, and you can click on links the same way in MyFill and get the original source, whatever the answer is. So Google Notebook LM has the challenge that it's very difficult, and I think Casandra also made the note in the Google Docs that she has. It doesn't really work yet with sharing. So it's when I have 550 students, I can't produce something in there and then easily share it with these students. On top of it, in EU, there are GDPR issues. We don't have a data processing agreement with Google, which means that in principle could do this, but I would violate GDPR rules, and in principle, a student could come up to me and say, I don't want to give Google my email address. You need to offer me something else. So for that reason, our university is just very hesitant to go beyond that because it can just create a lot of problems. So for me, Google Notebook LM is no-go for now. But the quality is exactly what I'm going for. Yeah, it has the transparency. It sticks to the curriculum as far as I can tell. And these are sort of the same points that I tried to highlight here. That most, I mean, I haven't only tried GPT. I just highlighted GPT here from OpenAI. I've tried the Google Gemini bots, and I've tried a bunch of other things. And my main impression is that they have difficulty sticking to the curriculum unless it's a RAG technology, and they are not that freely available. Is my impression. As I write in the last bullet point here, that is a matter of time. Who knows how quickly that will happen, but that will get there. So to sum up and also then look into the future and really highlight the main point that I want to make here is that I care much less about hallucinations. It's like 15 years ago, people would be saying, why do you use Wikipedia? It makes mistakes sometimes. Sure. Google search will lead you to mistaking information. But on my philosophy of science bachelor level, most bachelor levels, it just is very, very good if it's like microeconomics 1, or if it's organizational behavior, if it's strategy, like those generic courses. It's stolen so many textbooks on that topic that it knows those very well. But for these large-scale exams, I, as a teacher, I really care about that I am able to give students something that fits the course curriculum. I mean, constructive alignment is really the key thing here, right? You have a curriculum and you have an exam form, you have teaching, and you want that triangle to really closely aligned. And if they go to ChatGPT-4, there will be smart students that then focus on stuff that I will struggle to give them credit for because it's actually not what I'm sort of supposed to grade on. And so I think that topic is actually still undervalued in terms of importance. And I think it's sort of underappreciated to the degree that publishers and commercial textbooks will storm into this market and will offer something to your students that you might appreciate or not appreciate, depending on sort of your perspective on it, which is both why I'm thinking, at least for now, I want to be in charge of that. I want to be in charge of what my students are getting. I don't want to outsource that, ideally. So that's why I think this is a great setup. Building the expertise on doing this on Azure, it's not straightforward. We got some internal grants, and we have managers and leaders who are very open-minded. As long as they don't have to do the work, if they can outsource the work, then they're happy to sort of give some small funds. But free RAG systems with Google Notebook LM or other options will probably emerge in the future. But if you go, for instance, to AIED TA, I don't want to be a commercial for them, but I'm reasonably aware of their product. It's like $1 per student, apparently. So it's not expensive for students to sign up with it or for a course for a university to pay for it. So the situation has changed a lot. Last year, 2024, when I offered this, there was no alternative out there at all. So who knows what it looks like next year. And I can see there are a bunch of comments in the chat. I haven't opened the chat, but it's something is there. I'll look at that. But we also have a few more minutes for the Q&A because this was my last slide. I will upload a link to the slides here in just a second. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Carsten. That's really incredible. And to get to learn from your experience, because you're really very, very far along with the level of testing and analysis you've been doing. So it's so valuable for us, and we could hear you speak all day too. But as we have limited time, we are going to turn it to Q&A. If you have to go on the hour, please fill out our exit ticket and drop your question in the chat before you go, and we'll hopefully get to it now, and we are recording.
I wanted to, Carsten mentioned something that was really important and is one of the partial answers of one of the questions that I was seeing in the chat, the Zoom chat. Is one of the reasons that I chose Fastbots as the platform is that you have to build it from scratch. It's not like a GPT. I started like playing around with GPTs, but it always gave an answer because it's embedded in ChatGPT, and Fastbots, it's limited. You can limit it if you set the creativity of the chatbot to a minimum. You can put it in a 0 or 1%. It limits the answers to whatever the students put in the data set. So Fastbots is a platform that allows you to say I don't know, for the chatbot to say I don't know, and because you have to build it from scratch. If you put the slider of the creativity of the chatbot to 100, it would be just like using ChatGPT. But one of the rules for the course is for the chatbot to have very, very, very little or even none of the creativity. It's what the term is used in the platform, of the creativity of the LLM. The other question that I saw is why does Fastbots win over other platforms? I found it. It wasn't like a very. I didn't do like did a lot of comparing or anything, but I found it was really easy to use, and you could also drag in YouTube videos, sitemaps, and other URLs like Notebook LM does. But this one, uses it, like I started using it because you could start like just, I was thinking, because sometimes students, when they go and meet users or people to collaborate, they record them, but they end up with this long videos or recordings that they won't ever go back and listen or watch them. So it is easy for chatbots to just take the video and put it into the knowledge base. And the thing is that since the video is not edited or anything, it would have a lot of mistakes. So the student would have to go into the task refinement part of chatbots and correct the chatbot iteratively to correct maybe the mispronunciation of things or the transcription that YouTube does when you upload a video. So this was one of the parameters that I thought that would be really useful for students to interact with different types of of formats to train the model. I started discovering that if you allow the students to train the bot on websites and random videos, they would start using the chatbot as like a personal Google, because they won't even bother to see what it's inside the website. Just look like at the headlines or the titles and tell the bot, just tell me what this means. So I restricted that because, well, that's not beneficial. If you want to do that, just add ChatGPT or just ask Google. You don't have to go through the whole training thing to ask what a website says. So I restricted it for PDFs and Word documents, because in that way they have to at least read what they are feeding the chatbot. So that was kind of at the beginning. I thought it was really cool because it allowed the students to use it to leverage the power of multimedia content, but then it turned into this easy way of not just recording and put it in there and not really analyzing the document. So that was something that that was like the story of how I chose chatbots, and then I stuck with it because, well, I bought a subscription and I used it. I have to use it.
Yes. Yes. Well, I wonder if we can turn to Carsten to answer a question, and then back over, because I think he has had something. I see the mic on. Yeah, Carsten, I found one that I thought you could answer, but yeah.
Yeah, so you highlighted the question by Kushama on, and considering that these AI tools can provide readily available information, what are my thoughts on how we can ensure students continue to develop strong logical thinking and problem-solving abilities? And I think that's an excellent question and an issue. For me, it really relates to what is the course in question and what is the exam form. So there are courses, in our case, especially on the master's level, that to a much bigger degree require sort of going in independent directions. When you have a large scale, fairly standardized bachelor course, this is a little bit different. It's really about understanding the curriculum and being able to solve the questions that are being posed there. So my thinking here is that, yes, there is a big risk. We know these studies that show that students who rely on chatbots for studying and then suddenly don't have them in their exam, then they struggle. So I've tried to make very clear to the students that they will not have access to the chatbot in the exam. They have to practice and exercise on being able to themselves solve these issues. This is about getting a help for, if you don't really know what a confounding variable is and what's the difference between a confounding variable and omitted variable bias, then it's really nice to get an explanation of those concepts. This is what it does well. I had one more line of thought. I did consider already this year to modify Phil to go in a tutoring direction that Ethan Mollick also continuously talks about. So being less willing to ask questions, but being sort of more eager to explain where one can find relevant information and to get the students to do that themselves. It was simply a matter of time that we couldn't do that. In another complementary course, another course in the bachelor, we have a RAG-based chatbot that gives feedback to students. But similarly, it would be an obvious next step to, and I know TA All Day does this to some degree, to have a chatbot that is programmed to ask questions rather than answer them. Yes, I think that's what I want. The primary thing I had in mind.
So that, Lucy, do you want to ask a question?
I do. Thanks to all of you for today. It's enlightening, and it's amazing to see that there's so much effort and into this problem solving and critical thinking at this level and preparing the students for life, right? And so kind of along those lines, and I know that this isn't a conversation that normally happens in the university. Well, my assumption is that, right? But are you also, because with the critical thinking and problem-solving focus, are you also seeing any kind of concerns or working that into talking about their future and dealing with the I guess like the SEL aspect of all of it, the social emotional part of the change that's coming and the change of the way that they're learning?
Well, I think that when you start working with AI, you're not conscious, or that's my experience, that students have been working with it without really without any structure, and it's very powerful. The AI, it's a very powerful tool because it asks a lot of information that you're not conscious about, really, because everyone starts prompting, and you know what happened with Studio Ghibli, the chat thing, that everyone started generating images in this style because OpenAI just did an example of what their model could do, and it just started like proliferating up to the point that, well, I don't know what would happen to this studio, but regardless of the legal implications, the creative consequence behind this is that years of work just is not longer appreciated as it was supposed to. And that's a deep question that is embedded under all the layers of functionality that AI delivers. And students are not conscious about this until it hits them. And it has happened to me that I have not only used AI for graphical, to generate graphic elements, but also to generate video and audio and coding. And this notion of originality and this notion of the human value behind work, creative work, starts to hit them when they see that AI can make a song, and start to see that AI it's able to code. Because music, I think, is something that is unique to humans. I don't know anyone that doesn't like any music. Everyone likes some kind of music. You may not agree on what music you may like, but everyone agrees on that we like music. It makes us feel things. And when you see that AI, and when students experience that music can be generated without human input or with minimum human input, it touches them. They start questioning, they say, well, this is cool, but it seems wrong. And they start drawing a line there. And I also notice when I start telling them, because we are all very engaged and aware of new developments. And they start I start asking them, would you use this model because it analyzes data and it creates beautiful pictures and whatever? And they say, yeah, it's cool. And then I tell them, it happened to me, not to get political or anything, but I told them, well, this is Elon Musk's LLM. And some of them just said, no, I'm not going to use that. They drew, others they didn't mind. Some of them just said, okay, I don't want to do this because it comes from this place. And that's the thing with AI, is that there's a thick layer of functionality, efficiency, and time-saving capacities that we don't ask what's happening beneath it. How are you gathering the data? How is this, where is this coming from? And what is the impact it would have on ethical things, not only ethical things, but the things that we feel are uniquely human, like music.
Let me jump in again, Daniel, real quick, and Carsten, I would love to hear from you on this too. I'm thinking, referencing, and Daniel, please come back on or respond as well. You bring up Ethan Musk. Whenever a couple weeks ago, he talked about the use of chatbots and how after a certain level, regardless of how you were using it, there was a certain level of like depression. If you were using the voice bot or one that had, do you guys remember this thing on LinkedIn? And he said, but people that are using it for research are not hitting, like having those same problems with depression and all of this. So I just wonder, do you see yourselves or your colleagues being intentional about that aspect of the conversation?
So you're thinking of, in terms of the students' use, if they face those challenges in overusage or...
Exactly. And also just thinking about their future. I mean, I'm pretty positive. I'm a pretty positive person, but the last couple of weeks got a little bit scarier. I don't know about the rest of you, but for me, it got a little bit scarier with a lot of things coming out. So I worry, you know, I'm pretty good. I mean, I'm getting old, so I don't have these same issues, but I wonder if it's becoming a bigger problem for the university students.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts, sort of specifically about my class is it's my sort of starting point was it's a class where they get basically no feedback. And I just want to give them some kind of feedback. And for now, it's just in answering their questions, because before they could hardly get their questions answered when there are 550 students. So that's just a sort of a small step, and it's very instrumental for the purpose of this class and doesn't really solve sort of the broader issues that you mentioned. I think those are fundamental issues, and I think most universities, because of their size and bureaucracies, are not really ready for the change that is needed. And then I'm sometimes sort of tempted to tell people. I mean, when I sometimes also tell people in upper management, like, what do you do when AGI might appear 2-3 years from now? I actually don't think it will, but I mean, we can't rule it out, as Ethan Mollick says. And I mean, there is just no preparedness for that. And I, as you sort of also explicitly sort of outline in your question there, this is something that we have responsibilities for in our students. I can't really solve it in this particular class, but I'm trying to ensure that our education is thinking about it, because I think there is a tendency of this being very fragmented. Some classes do something, then some people can be fortunate to have Daniel as a teacher, and then a lot of stuff happens in their class. But this has to be a strategy. And I don't know of a lot of universities who are very, very good at that.
These questions, well, Daniel's comment about music and Lucy asking about the human side. I got to ask Carsten, because my background is philosophy too. Do you feel philosophy is still or will always be a uniquely human capacity to do philosophy, or can chatbots do philosophy?
So I've talked to some philosophy colleagues the other day, and as I said, it does sort of the basic stuff very well. It can talk about Popper and falsification and those kinds of things. But ask it about some details of Immanuel Kant or whatever you have in mind, and it does very poorly, simply because there aren't enough people who have written about Immanuel Kant as whatever paragraph on page 374 that a philosophy student will care about and spend like a master thesis on. So I think that's actually one of the areas where I think there is a lot of time still, and I'm mainly thinking about like a typical bachelor degree education, that it's all standardized courses. Like our entire bachelor degree, it's all standardized, and I don't really know what to think about that, because of course they need that domain specific knowledge, but they will also be doing stuff, for instance, statistics. They will be learning statistics that you can just use everyday language to get your computer to solve already now. So I don't have answers to this, but I think this is something that cannot be solved in an individual course.
And in the classic sense of the search for knowledge and wonderment about the world, it doesn't have that, right? It doesn't have the curiosity and the searching. Daniel?
I think that to answer Lucy's question about overuse and to overlap it with the discussion about philosophy, I think there is overuse, not only students, but by the world. Like there is overuse of social media, and the things that are beneficial about it and the things that are negative about it. And I think that regarding philosophy, well, it's at the center of this discussion, because technology always advances faster than the reflection of the way we use it. Yeah, well, when we had when the Industrial Revolution began, well, no one thought about overusing resources or overusing labor. Then we started thinking about it, and we saw, well, this is not as great as we thought. So we have to start scaling the appropriate, and we have to balance the system out. And that's a philosophical question, because AI asks us something that I think from a Western point of view, that kind of makes me think about Plato and Aristotle, who started questioning about ethics, about what it means to be human, about knowledge, about beauty. Would you say that a nice image generated by ChatGPT is beautiful? It is nice. It has a well enough resolution. It is high. It is, I don't know. It has the amount of pixels to be nice, and the colors are nice. But is it beautiful? Is what AI creates beautiful? So beauty, it's philosophical. It's a philosophical discussion about aesthetics. So I think we have to start like rethinking a lot of these terms, because when you talk about something as powerful that shifts elements of the human spirit and delegates it to something that is not human, well, we're not just talking about efficiency, we're talking about the meaning of things. And I think that philosophy is a main stakeholder, and philosophers are main stakeholders in the AI discussion, because I think they have the elements to steer us towards where AI becomes part of this world, and not just by using it or experimenting with it, but how it is something that we have to fit. And we have a preliminary response to the overuse of technology, and not the consequential philosophical or the consequences in philosophical terms. And it is the internet and social media. I think we have the problems we have with social media and information with the internet that we have, because philosophically we haven't like really dug into what it means. And I don't know if in a couple of 100 years there would be some book that we study as Immanuel Kant's dissertations on different topics, or Aristotle or whatever, talking about the internet and talking about social media and talking about AI, because, or cloning, or I just saw something that like weirded me out, that some scientists figured out how to bring from extinction some animals. And you would think, well,
Jurassic Park, anyone?
well, is that something that we should be doing? Not because we can, should we? And I think that's a philosophical question. I think the technical aspects of everything are solvable. I think that our human problems are very, very, very rooted into acknowledging and taking the right decisions and the most beneficial ones.
Thank you, Daniel. Wow, we sure have a lot we could keep talking about. We need more time. But yes, maybe custom bots for bringing back extinct animals could be one of our future showcases. Or no, how not to do that. I wonder, and many have to go. If Carsten and Daniel, you have so much experience and insights. I wonder if you could share with us to wrap up some parting words of advice for others who are in this space or trying to do similar things. What is your number one advice for other educators? Something that you've learned and want to leave them with. Carsten?
Yeah, that's a good big question. I mean, in some sense, I could say the stuff that I did talk about, really thinking about students use chatbots. We want them to sort of be able to access state-of-the-art knowledge, but we also want to ensure that they get stuff that is aligned with the course curriculum, especially if they have a standardized course. But if I were to have like 10 more minutes and if I had to continue the talk, it would be about some of the topics that came up here, is on really ensuring that your students don't just use it to get answers, but use it to be challenged or find like the source of the information that they're getting. I have not yet looked into how many people actually click on the link that is available to them. I will get that information. I'm very curious about that. I'm worried the number is going to be far lower than I hope it is, because that number is, for me, really a key thing. If 50% of my students click on the link, I will be extremely happy. If 30% do it, I guess I'm still happy. But that's, for me, a key thing, because just using it to generate an answer you put into your notes and then you use that in your exam, that's not going to help. You've forgotten about that. So dealing with that issue, that is sort of the key thing. So the epistemic transparency is the key thing for me here.
And I think your work shows how important it is to measure and track these things, because we have ideas and we have hopes, but unless we measure them, we don't really know what's going on. Daniel, final advice.
I think that the main reflection for me would be not to focus, the student, the challenge or the design challenge or the outcome is an excuse for them to rewrite the way they learn. I think AI, as I mentioned, asks a lot of fundamental questions. And one of them is that the students that we have, they think differently, they learn differently. And as a generation, at least for me, it's very challenging to connect with them. And I think AI can help us get there, because I think if we use this technology to create bridges that are not created, we would get to new paths for education. Because I think the traditional ones are overused. So I think chatbots are a way of the students owning their processes. So I think and they really value. I sense that. I think that they value when they have control over what they learn, because they're not the same generation that would say, "Oh, this would be maybe will be helpful in some other stage of my life." If they don't use it, they're gonna lose it. So I think by using chatbots and using artificial intelligence, they embed that knowledge because they had to go through it. And I think that would be my reflection.
Thank you so much, both. And to paraphrase the chat, this has been so incredible and complementary, both of your approaches, having you in the same session. Thank you so much. Hope to see all of you soon. Thank you for sticking to the end, and all the resources are in our meeting notes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.